Oh, hello, I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also in all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining me as usual is Aaron William Freeland. Aaron, how you doing, sir?
Doing very well, Frank. How are you?
My internet's kind of get. Let me apologize to the viewers right off the bat, and to you and to Eduardo, our producer, that if I go off, I'm sorry. The internet here is they're having issues, so we'll see. I've gone in and out now a couple of times, and here we are. We're able to do the show, so why don't we just get at it or go after it? How you doing, by the way?
Doing very well, Frank. Everything is. It was a very good weekend. The Rock clinched home floor for the entire playoffs, and we're doing all right. So
Well, tell us a little bit about that.
sure. Rochester came up. Thought it was going to be a slightly more interesting game than it was. Unfortunately, it was 10-1 at the half. So there was not a lot going on there. Just a whole bunch of kicking and screaming. Um, but rather lopsided game, unfortunately. But it turned out in the Rock's favor.
As it kind of ended.
Yeah,
All right, and lacrosse playoffs, of course, they'll be going on. It's going to be. It's been an interesting year because they changed uh, who you play and how many times you play them, and they created a balanced schedule, which kind of, at least at face value, took away an advantage for teams like Toronto, Buffalo, where there's a congregation of teams within a small area, so that they played most of their games against those teams before this year, which some might have deemed that that was an advantage taken away from those teams. Do you agree, or what's your opinion on that?
well, there were certain teams that you knew were weaker in your division, so it was easier to prey on them because you played them more times. But by going with a balanced schedule as the way they have, East gets to play West a little more often. Toronto was in first at 14-3, San Diego second at 12-5, Albany at 10-7, tied with Georgia and Buffalo. Then you had Halifax, Panther City Lacrosse, both with 9-8 records. Vancouver and Saskatchewan with 8-9 records, as well as the New York Riptide. It balanced things out. There were no longer really particularly weak teams, but hey, I'm glad it's worked out the way it has so far.
Well, it's awesome. I'm glad
Yeah.
it was a great season. We love covering the National Lacrosse League. As you know, we've been doing it. Oh my gosh. Well, I go back to the late 70s, early 80s with covering lacrosse. So that's been a week or two. And of course, then we started doing these shows under the Candid Frank Live umbrella. And wow, it's been a while for that too. It's been, I guess, more than 12 years, around 12, 13 years. And actually, we've been together doing what we're doing right now for about that time.
Yeah, it's been over a decade, so
Yeah. Yeah.
time well spent.
Yeah. There could be some debate over that, but we won't debate it. We'll speak proudly and boldly about the work that we do and the fun that we have and the interest that we have in talking about the news. So, you know what? Why don't we start with the news today? And let's talk about what's going on in the news because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. And let's talk about the 2024 Canada carbon rebates. They'll be deposited today for all the people who are complaining about the carbon tax. You've made it clear that this kind of offsets any kind of extra cost for the general public. Let's keep that in mind. It could be different for other people.
Yeah, farmers for the most part are exempt from the carbon tax for fuel that is used for running their factory, their farming machinery, and for heating greenhouses. Truckers get an offset for what they use while trucking. But for the rest of us Canadians who normally just get gas at the local corner, um, those, if you filed before March 15th, should have been receiving their first payments today. I am happy to report that on my Facebook feed, I have seen some folks saying, "Hey, I did get it." Anybody who's filed their taxes since March 15th will see their first payment in May, Well, those filing after today will have to wait until June or July before they see the first deposit. So in this case, it's better to file early. That way you get your hands on your cash that much faster. Most people are going to be seeing it going in as CDA carbon rebate dash CCR. Uh, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be labeled like that, but there will be CDA in there as well as CCR. CCR is not Clearwater Revival, but it is the Canadian carbon rebate.
There you go. And now on another, let's just say, problem with being the Trudeau government and predictions. There's a prediction now that tax hikes are in the offing in this budget. Aaron, this one's a little harder, if they happen, are a little harder to defend.
They are, but unfortunately, as with recovering from anything, and especially a pandemic that hit Canada as hard as it did, um, there are certain expenses that are going to come up. Um, there are more than $38 billion in commitments over a number of years. 17 billion of those commitments involve loan-based programs, and so about $21 billion could hit the government's bottom line directly. Now that doesn't include other new budget measures that haven't yet been announced. The deficit will not increase in this year's budget. That is something that I'd like to make everyone aware of. Um, Canada's economy has so far managed to avoid recession for the most part, but growth is unfortunately not as fast as it could be. The number one priority for the government should be to be showing fiscal responsibility. That's the signal the Bank of Canada needs before it can lower interest rates. Now, nobody is arguing about the social programs that the Liberals are putting in, but we're trying to do it in a fiscally responsible and non inflationary way, and that could be tricky.
Yeah, anytime that you create a situation where taxes are raised, it's never a good thing. In general, as a knee jerk reaction, if you will. Justifying increased taxes is very difficult, to say the least, um, because that money comes out of people's pockets, and if they haven't been earning, inflation is basically hurts people who are unable to keep up with the rate of inflation. In other words, they earn more and more money. Now, profits can be controlled in a way that rise above taxes. But unfortunately for the ordinary Canadian, who's, whether they're on minimum wage or on a job that raises don't come that often, because a lot of jobs I spent a whole lifetime of working. How much I got paid was determined, and sometimes didn't change because either I wasn't working for the government, which I didn't, or I wasn't working for a company that had either benefits packages, because I spent most of my life in construction. So we got paid whatever we could get, a commitment from whoever our employer was. So for some like myself and people who walk the step that I walk, increased taxes make it difficult, to say the least, to make ends meet. But we'll see. These are, taxes are a part of what government does. And the perception sometimes ignites the joke that we were talking about, my internet. It ignites attitudes and beliefs that aren't necessarily, built on facts, but on, again, we keep saying this, I keep saying this. A lot of how we deal with stuff today isn't about fact, it's about how we feel. And we obviously feel that any taxes that are raised are not appropriate, if you know where I'm going with that.
No, and it's true. That does always seem to be the perception that the government is stealing from the average Canadian. But people do need to remember that those taxes go towards healthcare, roads, fire and emergency services, education, all that sort of fun stuff. It's one of those things that people don't like to remember, but need to be reminded of.
And I'll add, for those that feel differently, sometimes they go to entitlements that they would prefer the government weren't involved in, or at least to the degree they are. In other words, cut back on entitlements, but that is what it is. Let's talk about a potent storm that's on its way. We're talking about heavy snow and rain looming over our prairie provinces.
Yeah, so in typical prairie fashion, temperatures are expected to drop this week, ushering in a period of heavy snowfall. So, for parts of the region, it's going to be a formidable multi day snowfall event, ending with around 20 centimeters of snowfall for some locations. For southern Manitoba, heavy rainfall is what's coming. With melting snow due to mild daytime highs and the rain, there is a flood warning that has been issued for parts of Manitoba, specifically around Thompson and the Paz, as well as Dauphin and Brandon. Um, Winter weather is going to be returning to Alberta. There's a weak trough forecast to develop across southern Alberta on Monday as an upper trough moves across the province, and BC precipitation will then gradually sink south across the province with a tendency to transition over to wet snow due to the colder air that's already in place. Tuesday through Wednesday, snow is going to go through Saskatchewan and Manitoba. On Wednesday, the rain snow line is going to slump across Manitoba as northwesterly winds are going to drop temperatures on the backside of the low. So if you're out and about, be aware, drive with the appropriate speed for conditions, give yourself a little extra time.
Let's talk about Quebec Employers Group, concerned about the reaction to immigration and how it can affect job, you know, jobs in the marketplace in Quebec.
So the latest spat going on between Quebec and Ottawa over immigration is based on politics and not the reality of the labor market. This is coming from the head of a major employers group. In some ways, it's deplorable. Carl Blackburn is the president and CEO of the Conseil du Patronat du Québec. His comments come as Quebec Premier François Legault is threatening to hold a referendum on immigration if the federal government doesn't take rapid action to stem the rising number of temporary immigrants, which includes foreign workers, international students, and refugee claimants. The majority of Quebecers think 560,000 temporary immigrants is too much. It's hurting the healthcare system. We don't have enough teachers and we don't have enough housing. Uh, the issue here is that you're going to find a lot of politicians are going to be trying to score points on immigration. But at the same time, in order to get everything back up and running into where it needs to be, you need these foreign workers. But politicians are trying to stigmatize those immigrants. So it becomes an issue then of will people want to come and fill the jobs that other Quebecers don't seem to be filling?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Okay, 8 years since BC declared public health emergency, toxic drug crisis rages on, it says here.
so Executive Director Brittany Graham has been part of the Vancouver area network of drug users. Uh, she's seen a lot of people succumb to the toxic drug crisis. And this past Sunday, yesterday, marked 8 years to the day since the province declared a public health emergency related to the deadly toxic drug crisis. Last time they did a count, it was somewhere in the 65 to 75 person range of people. That's more than a yellow school bus of people that are dying each month. It's basically thousands of deaths that they're currently looking at there. And the government, BC government, and public health officials don't seem to be making any headway to stop it. So that is an ongoing concern.
It has to be, in my opinion, and I'm not really an expert in this, but for me, a simplified solution has to come from North America as a whole, because the big problem with drugs and these kinds of drugs that are causing this kind of tragedy, they come across our borders from other countries. And there's something that we can do. I know they're trying to do that, but it seems for some reason BC is suffering enough that they've spent the last 8 years complaining about it. Is it because BC government cares more about their people when it comes to drugs and other provinces don't? I don't think that's true. I think there's a problem, because it's societal, and people really need. Um, I don't know. I guess they need to know that they can be okay without taking drugs. I mean, one of the problems with the way society works is the people who are left behind lose jobs or can't get jobs. They get frustrated. They become they look for a way to find happiness, and unfortunately for many, knee-jerk reaction is to take drugs and hide from their life circumstance, and then they get trapped. And that's the hard part about drugs is once you start doing them, it is my understanding that they're hard to stop doing. And unfortunately, one of the only ways that people stop taking drugs is because they stop breathing. They don't live anymore, and that's the road that it takes you on. So pray for BC to solve their problem, but it's an overarching problem that goes beyond BC, in my opinion.
It is more of a global problem than people like to let on, and it's more endemic across Canada, sorry, than people like to let on. So
Absolutely. Well, Tesla, they're laid off 10% of their workforce. You would think with the support that they get from governments here in North America, and in fact the world, that they should be growing, not shrinking. But there has been some bad news that's come out of Tesla, which may have hurt, um, you know, their sales, and that in turn, this is a cause and effect type situation, right?
yeah, and as it currently stands, Tesla had over 140,000 employees. That was as of December. So laying off 10% of that, that's 14,000 people, which is, this is a huge blow for them. And on top of the botched Cybertruck release, not to mention the poor fitting, trucks breaking down within 5 miles of the dealership, not being able to get service, and the latest accelerator problems. Um, this is just a bitter pill.
Yeah, and the price
It's
to replace batteries has been, publicly um, used as a cudgel against electric cars.
it's something, unfortunately, that Elon is going to have to swallow. So we'll see.
Absolutely. All right, real quick, let's go through the CFL, and there's been a couple more signings. Linebacker Joe Beckett in BC.
Yeah. Now they've signed Joe Beckett again. He's 6'4", 240 pounds. He moved north to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for the 2023 training camp. Will go on to register 4 tackles in 2 preseason games before he's released June 3rd. He also attended a rookie minicamp with the New York Giants in 2022 after a standout career at Wofford, where he registered 183 tackles.
Calgary.
Picked up
Gillett.
Demario Hostin, which is a nice pickup for them. He's hoping to do what in 2024 what he did against them in 2023. I guess Calgary figured if you can't beat them, join them.
Stampeders, another big pick. Offensive lineman Eric Smith.
Yeah. Eric Smith was picked up on Friday. I'm sorry we missed it on that particular show, but we ran out of time. The Atlanta native has played 4 NFL games, 2 with the Giants, 1 with the Dallas Cowboys, and 1 with the Arizona Cardinals, and has attended every training camp and been on practice squads of Miami Dolphins, New York Jets, New England Patriots, and Tennessee Titans. So there's a wealth of learning experience going on there. Hopefully he'll be able to put it to good use.
So two good things happened for the Marlies. They are helping to rehabilitate a goaltender, a Leaf goaltender, finally coming back, and also they clinched a playoff spot.
Yeah, so Matt Murray was actually seen practicing with them and taking warm-ups with the team over the previous weekend. Glad to see that he's finally making his way back onto the ice. His contract, as it currently stands, stays buried, so that's okay for the time being. It gives them a little more playing room. And yeah, thanks to their performance over the weekend, they did manage to clinch a playoff spot. So
Let's talk about the Habs and Sens. They met the Canadians, and Sens did.
and they unfortunately ended up on the wrong end. The Senators managed to outlast the Canadians 5-4 in a shootout. Kachuk, who had a career high in goals, had an impressive night with 12 shots on goal and 8 hits, in addition to his 3 points. He had a pair of goals, and Shane Pinto and Thomas Chabot also scored for Ottawa.
Yeah, and the Jets, 4 goals in the first period. They they did a number on the Avalanche, 7-0.
Yeah, and this is coming on the heels of a 3-0 defeat of the Dallas Stars, which are potentially two playoff opponents that they're going to be seeing in the next couple of weeks.
Kadri and the Flames beat the Coyotes.
Yeah, Kadri was up to his old tricks again, trailing by a goal entering the third period. Nazem Kadri stepped up, as he has done all season. He scored the tying and winning goals, while also adding an assist on Sunday to lead Calgary to a comeback win over the Arizona Coyotes.
The Canucks this year swept the Oilers.
This is a good showing by Casey DeSmith, who had 32 saves. They strengthened their lead atop the Pacific Division with a 3-1 win, but they haven't clinched the division yet. Evander Kane scored in reply for the Oilers, who are again without captain Connor McDavid, who's missed his third straight game with a lower body injury and is considered day to day.
2 games to do it. Matthews is at 69. He just needs one in the last 2 games of the season to hit 70, a very important number historically in the National Hockey League looking back.
Yeah, I have a feeling he's not going to see the ice. Just as speaking personally, if I were Leaf management, 69 is great because it's hilarious. But at the same time, you're going to be playing Florida and you're going to be playing Tampa Bay back to back. And those, one of them, you're playing in the first round. The other one, you could potentially be playing on the second round. There is too much risk for shenanigans at this point to allow Matthews to play. But if Keefe does, hey, more power to him. Limit his minutes. As soon as he gets that 70th, park him on the bench.
Well, Matthews, I don't know if this is double entendre. He got past 67, which is a meaningful number. The question is, can the team get past 67 like Matthews did?
Yeah, that's the big one, right?
That's the 67 that sits in my head, and I think in most people's heads. And as far as the Leafs lost this game and the way they played, they came back from a 4-1 deficit. Not only did Matthews score a goal, the team played really well. The goaltender had a really bad start and then played well enough to help them tie 4-4. And then, of course, the game, got away completely in overtime and on a real bad goal, really, in my opinion.
No, it wasn't Sammy's best performance, I'll be honest with you. But by the same token, we're not going to be able to catch Florida. Tampa Bay can't catch us. We are essentially locked in. That game basically meant less than nothing to us. It was important for Detroit because it kept them alive for a little while longer. But by the same token, I'm not really all that upset over losing it. Were there things they probably could have tightened up? Yes. Could they have used it as practice? Yes. But again, it's not the end of the world.
And keep in mind, folks, that the last 2 games they're playing are against teams that feel it's quite possible they'll meet the Leafs in the playoffs. Florida, obviously,
Yeah.
but the other Florida team that calls Tampa home could end up playing the Leafs as well if they, win in the next round, and it could be the Leafs up against both those teams. So, in as far as sending a message or doing something to hinder, the lineup that the Leafs can present in the playoffs, I get what you're saying, and as far as Matthews could become a target, but at the end of the day, that's the kind of stuff that the Leafs have to stand up to. They can't cower against that stuff. They have to, in my opinion, Matthews has to play, and he has to play not sheepishly, because that's when bad things happen. Has to play a normal hockey game, play like he plays, and if he does get that goal, I agree with you that they can park him for a little bit. But I think what it seems like to me, at least by the way the team is reacting, the team is playing negatively and positively. This 70th goal, it might be too important to the rest of the team, but it is what it is, right?
No, and my personal milestones are always good, but if it comes at the expense of the team's performance, and that's when you have to sit back and really reevaluate.
Yeah, and you can't do that. It can't happen. So, yeah. Well, this was fun, Aaron. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Hey, always a pleasure, Frank. Thank you.
He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, airing Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.